and happy Sabbath. Welcome back to another study in the book of Daniel. We are going to pick up where we left off last week. It's good to see everybody live here on Zoom and the people that are gathered here, fellowshipping, breaking bread later, right? This is like Acts chapter 2 all over again, but 2,000 years later. For those of you who are watching via YouTube after this has been recorded, we are so glad that you have tuned in and that you are going to study with us. We want to remind you that in the description tab, if you click on it, it will open up and you'll see a couple of links, one to a digital PDF of the Daniel Syllabus, which is 459 pages, and then another link to purchase the syllabus, which we would recommend that you do after the Sabbath, but you're just going to want to be able to make notes. We fixed typos. You know, there'd be like the wrong chapter or verse in there. It's a lot of information. So it's good to have with you. It's just a good study tool. Make sure you have your Bibles as well. We really want you to share this video. You know, we've got our share the gospel. Click a button. It's an arrow button that says share. If you're cool with sharing the peanut butter and jelly sandwich you made today, it should be easy to share something that some spiritual food where we'll never hunger again, right? Like the video, subscribe, and look, you want Jesus to come? The Bible says when the gospel is preached unto all the ends of the earth, then shall the end come. So if you want Jesus to come, we've got to share the gospel. Okay. What else am I forgetting? Now I just always feel like we're forgetting something because we just talk so much, or I do. Are we good, Paul?
Yeah, I feel the same. I've said it so many times I don't remember what I have or haven't said. So, you know.
Well, thanks to Savannah in our chat window that we have here on Zoom, you get to see all of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, our email address. So, you know, if you've got that, which I bet a bunch of you have, be sure to respond and post videos and verses, and also if you have prayer requests. We are a praying group and we have our own I think it's called, I don't like the word Discord. I don't. I wish we could change that. It just seems weird. Join our Discord and chat with us. But we've got WhatsApp and we have chat that we go through all week, encouraging each other. And the prayer has been powerful. Okay, so we really encourage you to email us. You can even post it in the comments if you want, and have a bunch of people praying for whoever's on your mind, or even if it's for you. Don't forget to let us know where you're watching from so we can put a pin on the map. Wherever in the world, we want to put a pin there to recognize that you're studying with us. And also, this is not a presentation. This is a Bible study. So we go at the pace we go. You know, we want to make sure we're understanding it. So if you're wondering, how are they only on chapter 3 when there's 20 videos? We go verse by verse, and this is a discussion. So for those of you who are watching live on Zoom, if you want to raise your little digital hand, or you can wave like this, and Paul will use his nifty little whiteboard that he's got all ready. Look at that. Paul is on it. And we'll make sure to call on you because we want to hear what you have to say. Or you can use the chat if you want to post something. Okay. Bible's open to Daniel 3. Syllabus open to page 66. And let's go ahead and start with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that you've given us the strength to endure another week, a week of work and chores and just busyness. And we're so glad that we're able to come together and study your word, whether it's on YouTube, on Zoom, or here in person. Your word is being studied. We're so grateful that your Holy Spirit is working in each and every one of our lives. And wherever we're at on the path to forever, wherever we're at in our walk in life, we just ask for strength to endure. We ask for your love to come through us so that we would be an inspiration to each other, and that we would see Jesus in everything that we study. As we study Daniel, please help us to understand why this is important for us to understand today. What does it have to do with us as individuals? What does it have to do with us as a church or as a nation in the world? So we ask for the wisdom and knowledge that comes from heaven, and we need that peace that comes from heaven. And we're so grateful for your love and for your mercy and your grace that comes from heaven. Please help us to think spiritually here, to empty us of self, that we're not trying to use our worldly minds to understand spiritual things. Thank you for your love. Please protect us from evil, from distraction, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. We're going to pick up where we left off, where there is a union of church and state. We went through quite a bit of background, a little bit, but on Babylon. Remember the books? I don't know what episode that was, but there was a whole list of books that I showed you. So if you want to know more about Babylon, wasn't it fascinating? I don't know, all those bullet points, the numbers and the image and just the symbols of that nation, that empire of the world. There's a lot more to it than what we just covered. So we're going to pick up in verse 3. So let's have our first Zoom volunteer, Daniel chapter 3, verse 2, signal volunteer. Terry, all right, go ahead whenever you're ready. Don't forget to unmute. The dreaded unmute button. It's a tough one. It is. She's trying because I can see her screen like going all over the place. So there you are.
All right. Wonderful. Good thing Savannah bailed me out. And King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up.
Okay, do we have another, is anybody using NIV or another translation? I'm just curious what other words were used. Because when they were talking about the band in chapter 2, it was neat to hear the different versions. So it looks like Doug found the Bible. Are you looking in a different version? You want to read that, Doug? Daniel, the clear word, which is what we paraphrase, that what we call it? Yeah. So Doug, read chapter 3, verse 2. I'm just curious to kind of help us understand. Sometimes we hear these King James or New King James version of explaining something that maybe isn't so contemporary or modern to us. So whenever you have it, Doug, go ahead.
It says, after the statue was set up, the king ordered all his officials to come and participate in the dedication. This included the local princes, governors, commissioners, judges, treasurers, royal advisors, heads of the police, and all other government officials. Everyone not away on duty was ordered to attend the dedication of the statue that Nebuchadnezzar had set up.
I like that. So what other people would you add by today's that had to come? Heads of state, right? Your lawmakers, the governor, right? The mayor. Yeah. So look, all the political rulers were present, and you see them in order of rank as well. All the civil powers of the Babylonian world were present there for this religious celebration. Did you catch that? All the political leaders were gathered together for a religious celebration. The government was enforcing a religious decree. To refuse to worship was considered high treason against the government. So the story of Daniel 3 illustrates what happens when civil power seeks to establish religion. And in Daniel chapter 6, it will illustrate what happens when the civil power attempts to forbid the free exercise of religion. So do you see that? You have one political power that wants to force worship. And then in chapter 6, when this is talking about the Medes and the Persian Empire, you have an abolishment of religious worship. Now, for those of you that are familiar with our Constitution, our First Amendment deals with the separation of church and state. You know why? If you go back in history, you see what happens when church and state are united. It was not good really for anybody. It wasn't good for believers, and it wasn't good for non-believers. It didn't make any sense. It was a terrible witness. So that's something to keep in mind as we see, how does this apply to us today? Well, one side wants to force religion, another side wants to abolish it, and you can decide on your own, how that would apply in just our government today. All right, let's go to Daniel chapter 3 and the next verse 4. Let's have another volunteer read verse 4, and this is going to be in regards to the worship decree being universal. Daniel, is it verse 3, Terry? Is that what you're telling me? Verse 3. Well, they all worship there, but we want to hear the command. So we're going to do verse 4. Verse 3 goes over the fact that all the people that were decreed to come had shown up. So we've got, man, you guys are shy tonight.
Doug?
Oh, Doug. Noted.
No, we're not.
All right, Doug, go ahead, and then Annie, I'll get you on the next verse, sister.
And Dieta.
And then Dieta next. All right.
Then a herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages."
Representatives from all the nations of the day were present for this religious celebration enforced by the state. You know, it's interesting. I gotta say this in the clear word, which is a paraphrase, and I just want to make that clear. It's a great study companion, but being a paraphrase means it's not a translation of the original manuscripts or text or anything. But I think it's Jack Blanco, right?
Yeah.
My mom was your friend. You knew him, right? Okay. Man, she knows everybody.
I know.
She can remember everybody's name and who they're related to, what school they went to. That's what moms do. They remember everything. But I like how you all can agree with me on that. Okay.
Something.
All right. I don't want to get everybody riled up behind me. I'm sorry.
Well, I knew him when he was Jack White, so.
Jack White. I almost wanted to make another comment about, but I'll leave it. What you said in there, and now I went on such a tangent, I forgot what my point was. The people that weren't on duty off somewhere else. You said that, Doug. You were reading. You said everybody who was present and not on duty somewhere else. Because have you ever noticed that you have Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah in this chapter, but who do you not have? Was he a leader in Babylon? He was a leader, right? So he must have been off. And do you think that was a coincidence? And we'll see that. That's important. Daniel wasn't there, and in chapter 6, guess who's not mentioned? Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So is everybody's faith tested individually?
Yeah.
It's tested individually. It's so nice being part of a group, and sometimes we may lean on that too much, and when the group fails or parts of the group fail, we fail because we've maybe neglected, solidifying that independent and personal relationship with Jesus. Our faith will be tested as individuals, but so long as we're as a group, we need to continue to encourage each other. Okay, so representatives from all nations of the day were present for this religious celebration enforced by the state. All the political leaders of the day were present, and what did they do? They bowed before the image. Let's read, Annie, will you read verse 7, Daniel 3, verse 7. And then Dieta, or I'll have you do read Revelation 17, 15. So go ahead, Annie.
Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar, the king, had set up.
So I call it the band.
Yes,
For
I call
obvious.
it a band too.
So the expressions, notice the expressions peoples, nations, and languages. Dieta, would you read Revelation 17, verse 15?
And he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues.
This is a prime example of the Bible interpreting itself. You're going to see that expression, the waters, in Revelation chapter 13 and in Daniel chapter 7. There's beasts, these hybrid beasts that come up out of the sea. So it's good to understand what waters represents, and we get a good explanation of that. So remember what's neat here, because I'm hoping you're studying this on your own as well. But Daniel chapter 3 is a microcosm. It's a literal historical event that took place that foreshadows what will take place universally here on this planet, okay? In a symbolic and spiritual manner, all right? So why is it important to study the Old Testament and these events that happen? Because they're really educating us on what's happened in history and what we'll see on a global aspect and scale, opposed to just, here you have kind of a localized, it's still, Babylon was the empire of the world, don't get me wrong, but the world is much more populated now. There's many nations and empires, if you will. So remember to connect those: Daniel 3, Daniel 7, Revelation 13, Revelation 17, as we continue on. Okay, so on page 67, at the very top, it says, time and again, the chapter emphasizes that music played a significant role in the connection with the false worship. So to speak, everyone was expected to dance to Babylon's tune. It says, to you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear, I'm going to just call it the band, you fall down and worship the gold image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. I believe we discussed that a little bit last week. Was that on the after study or during the study? I think it was during the study, right?
Study,
We talked, I think we talked about, go look up Ezekiel 28 in the description of Lucifer. Why is music important? Is music important? It has to be. It clearly has to be. Look, for everything that God has a true, the real copy of whatever it is, Satan's going to have a counterfeit. So do the angels from heaven, do they sing praises to God?
Yes.
When you're at church, do you sing hymns and praises to God? When you're driving in your car, do you sing praises to God? Do you think Satan would want praises sung to him?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And again, read Roger Morneau's book, A Trip into the Supernatural, his testimony, but he talks about how when he was involved in a Satanist church that they sang right out of the Christian hymn. We always think it's some creepy, dark, song or whatever. Don't get me wrong, there's some creepy, dark songs out there, but he wants to be like God. Isaiah 14 talks about what was in Lucifer's heart, that he wanted to be like God. So whatever God has, Satan will have a counterfeit of it. Okay. We have the next comment here. A death decree was given against those who did not worship the image of the beast. And it says, and whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. That is chapter 3, verses 6, 11, 15, and 19. There was an insignificant yet faithful remnant that refused to worship the image of the beast. This is going to be found in verse 12. We're going to read this. If the king could eradicate this remnant, then his triumph would be complete. So let's have somebody here in this living room.
Can I make a comparison? there?
Sure, just speak up nice and loud.
Okay,
I'm gonna
so
put-
it's just a little note when I
We can see
studied
Sharon.
this years ago
Go ahead,
in
Sharon.
my Bible, but chapter 3, I wrote idol worship. So false worship is set up with people by force, so they don't lose their life. Called the death penalty, right?
Mhm.
But the three Hebrew boys showed God's kingdom is set up by people who are willing to lose their life, then not obey. So that's the difference between
Yeah.
God's and then the world.
Yeah, he who saves
Their
his
oath
life
We'll lose
will
it.
lose it, right?
Right,
And
loses it.
he who loses his life, right? Well,
Yeah.
so you see
I
that,
was actually meditating on
yeah,
that
we see?
the other day. It's
That's
beautiful
good.
talk.
All right, who wants to read verse 12?
I will read it.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
Sherry,
look at that, a whole
do you
corner.
want Sherry?
And now,
All right, Sherry, go ahead, and then Teresa, you'll be the next verse, please.
12, right?
12.
Mhm.
There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up.
Who's accusing these certain Jews whose real names are Hananiah,
I
Mishael, and
know.
I just got a
I didn't
problem
wanna-
saying
I
Shadrach.
know.
I know it says it.
That's
in-
not their name.
that's what Nebuchadnezzar named them, after his gods. We went over that in the first chapter of Daniel. But who's accusing them of these three men to the civil power?
Mine says astrologers, or the
Yeah,
Chaldeans.
mine says the Chaldeans, yeah.
So, Teresa, would you read the bullet point, the next bullet point, which is quoting the verse here in Daniel 2, 4, 5, 10, 12, and then chapter 3, verses 9 through 12.
Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up.
Thank you for reading that. So again, as we go through this, I want you to, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to what's going on in the world today? How do I see Jesus through this? So the Chaldeans were the religious leaders of Babylon, the priestly leaders, okay? And these religious leaders hated God's remnant because of their religious convictions. You see this in Egypt as well. The beginning of the plagues, it was like a battle of gods, if you will, and Pharaoh's God lost because he's not a god, but the God in heaven showed that. Lowercase g. Esther, another. These are all examples. You can go through, start at the very beginning in the garden, all the way through the Bible, and you're going to see the same scenario, right? But a different time, different place, different people. And here we are again. So, who is the accuser in the Bible? Satan is the accuser. We're talking about, knucklehead. We were talking about accusers earlier today. We really need to look at ourselves and how we act. Because I was having a conversation with somebody today and we were talking about, accusers, and I'm just like, in the Bible, like the accuser was Satan, or the Pharisees wanted to accuse him, accuse Jesus, to cause harm to him. It's just, are we accusers? Like as individuals, are we accusers? We need to make sure that that our heart has the right motive, whenever we're whatever we're doing. But I just kind of had that thought. So it's interesting because look up in the Bible, accuse. Look that word up, accuser, accusation, and see what context it's brought up in. And just a few that I looked at, they were all against God's people. Okay. Now you had a shaking in the valley of Dura. When Nebuchadnezzar took Daniel and his three friends captive to Babylon, he left King Zedekiah to rule in Jerusalem. So if you look in 2 Kings chapter 24, verses 14 through 17, Paul, do we have that slide for this quote here? If not, we'll read all the verses. If we have the slide, we'll just read what the slide has. So it's 2 Kings chapter 24. No, okay, that's all right. Let's open up our Bibles.
14 to 17.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
just
I
got
found
kind
it,
of a part of the quote. Did you find it?
Yeah.
You want to read that?
I can read that.
All right, I appreciate
Let
it.
me pop that up on the screen here. It says, also he carried into captivity all Jerusalem, all the captains and all the mighty men of valor, 10,000 captives and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained except the poorest people of the land. And he carried Jehoiakim captive to Babylon. The king's mother, the king's wives, his officers, and the might of the land he carried into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. All the valiant men, 7,000, and craftsmen and smiths on 1,000, all who were strong and fit for war, these the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon. Then the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Jehoiakim's uncle king in his place and changed his name to Zedekiah.
So would not Zedekiah be expected to be present at the dedication? We know that in the year 594 BC, we have the text here, Jeremiah 51:59. King Zedekiah made a trip to Babylon. Was it to worship the image? Furthermore, there were other Hebrew youths. We've talked about this. Sometimes we only think it was Daniel and his 3 friends that were taken from Jerusalem. You saw here or heard what Paul just read. There were thousands, and look, it took the best, the brightest. You know, it's what empires do. You know, they want everybody to work for them and basically convert them over to their system. But you had thousands and thousands. But what about the other Hebrew youth who were placed in governmental positions when Daniel and his friends were taken to Babylon? Is it just possible that maybe they also worshiped the image? We know in chapter 3 that 3 stayed standing, I should say, stayed standing. Nebuchadnezzar attempted to intimidate the remnant who kept the commandments of God and worshiped only him. So let's have somebody read Daniel chapter 3 and Diamond, I see it, verse 15, Daniel 3 and verse 15.
Now, if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the band.
There you go. I was wondering, like, I keep trying to help, but hey.
And all kinds of music, ye shall fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, but if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands?
Does that sound familiar? Pharaoh, right? The question, who is your God? Oh, you're about to find out. You know, in the world, we see this play again, you know, in Revelation, and we'll see this in the world. The king's strategy consisted in 3 steps: fascination, intimidation, and annihilation. Everything in this example of Daniel 3 sought to wow the senses, the music, the majestic image, the presence of the political leaders from all over the world, the peer pressure, were all meant to mesmerize those who were present for the dedication of the image. When the Hebrew worthies were unwilling to be, what's the word here? Hypnotized. Interesting. So mesmerized, hypnotized by the majesty of the occasion, the king sought to use intimidation and threats. When the threats did not work, the king restored the final solution: annihilation. I told you last week about a video that Little Light Studios produced called Pseudoology, The Art of Lying. It is now available on Amazon Prime. So if you don't have that DVD, you can watch it on Amazon Prime. It's called Pseudoology, The Art of Lying. And look, this is reminiscent of what we saw in the Garden of Eden. If you read in Patriarchs and Prophets, she says that the serpent with a melodious voice, you know, so that was attractive to the ear, you know, like, what is that what is that sound, right? The ear. You ever heard of a siren?
Mm.
You know, that the like mythological, you know, like, oh, mesmerized, you know, by the music. We know that that's a big deal in what's on TV and what's on the radio.
I think the peer pressure would have been hard too, just because if everybody is bowing and excited over this image and you're the only one, like think about that when we're the only one that maybe doesn't agree with the world on something and everybody else. And
You know what that's
happens
called? Psychology 101. It's conformity. You know, we've talked about, do you think that everybody there in Babylon for the image worship was like, oh, I believe that this is God? You know, people are like, man, I had to close my shop to come here. You know, like I'm losing money, you know, to be here. Let's get this over with. Look, that's why the mark of the beast is on the right hand and the forehead. The seal of God is only in the forehead, not your side head, not your back head or the top of your head.
where you make decisions.
Hey, it's important. I'm just saying the Bible, like God specifies, because our prefrontal cortex, right, our frontal lobe is here. It's a decision we make. You can't work your way to heaven, but your works can show who you're allegiant to. I'm going to plug Paul's sermons. He did 2 sermons on faith and works. So you can go to Golden's YouTube channel and click on, is it sermons or is it church services? I already forgot, but there's a playlist there. But you can see it, faith and
He's like,
totally confused him there by throwing in other stuff.
well,
Okay.
the immediacy, like if, you know, like if they didn't do it right that moment, they were going to immediately be thrown into the fiery furnace too. Like there's no time element there. It'll be in the future later.
But
Like
he told them, he asked them, are you sure you don't want to bow down? You know,
Yeah.
later on they were.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's a good point.
yeah.
And I like the way the direction your minds are going, because that's the next point. But go ahead, Teresa.
Well, I
Like,
was
finish
just
that
gonna
thought.
say that he still wanted to break their will, you know, by trying to give them another chance and intimidate them, you know.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
have another chance, think it over, or you know, the fire furnace is there.
Yeah. And
So-
do they represent Babylon's kingdom in the sense of like their duties? They worked for them,
Right.
you know. So think about where I brought you up from,
Yeah.
you know, from what we've seen in
your
chapter
salaries
1.
and
Yeah,
everything.
what chapter 1, you know, and like you had your vegetarian diet, you hid it from me at first, and then
It's like a child.
you had the dream and the interpretation. Do you think the king was embarrassed a bit too?
Oh, yeah.
You
Was
know,
put on the spot.
It's like
yeah,
when our
put on the
kids
spot,
don't
right.
Listen to us.
There's kids that don't listen to parents. Annie has a comment. Go ahead,
An
sister.
adult.
Yes. I like to add to what that lady said. I didn't catch her name. Sorry.
Teresa. That's all right. Her name's
Okay.
Teresa.
Because
Teresa.
okay, well, I have like 1, 2, 3, 3 comment.
Uh-oh.
It's the whole chapter, Daniel 3. It's all about worship, and also it's parallel with Sunday law when in our time, to me. And also for the accuser, we are being accused because some of the people, I am being accused right now, some of my colleagues, because I'm not following what they follow. I say, I am sorry. I'm not following what you're following because I'm following what the word of God said. And then also for the Jews, I know there were some of the Jews do believe in God, but they bow down, tying their shoes, pretending tying their shoes, but they're bowing down. You get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, you and I have talked about this a lot. You know, it's like the people praying at the restaurant that are like, well, I'm gonna put my napkin in my lap, you know, and they're like, oh, Heavenly Father, bless the food I'm in. You know what I mean? Like you don't want people to see you, you know what you're doing around. Yeah, it's like you bow down, and while I'm down here, I'll tie my shoe. You know, it's not a heart. You know, their heart isn't sincere with it, but their actions are. I'd rather save my life, you know, than right, than not do it. Right. And,
Yeah.
and you know, and look, in this we have, you know, the punishment's death by fiery furnace. I don't know if that was.
Faith, like just imagine, like,
Yeah.
can you imagine? I mean, how do you feel if
would you be able to do that right now? Like, that's just faith. That's just incredible. That bond, that connection that they have with God. Like we don't care. I don't care. The whole world and all these heads of states are saying bow, and I need to bow. I don't care. I'm standing there. Like that connection. Like literally...
Imagine the guillotine, during the Dark Ages, and just look, a lot of people were, and I've told you, I've been reading the Book of Martyrs, Fox Book of Martyrs. People were given chance after chance to recant. And the people were like, not a chance, and not even like thinking about it, but like stoked, because they're like, next thing that's going to happen is I'll see Jesus coming, So there's that awesome boldness, that they have, that fear of God. Yeah. The Holy Spirit. And that's what we need. It's easy to say, right? Oh, I would, but look at yourselves in your daily lives.
You should never be too sure.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're like pompous about it, you may have a problem, but look in your daily life, just with the aspect of conformity. Look at the things you do participate in that you probably normally wouldn't, just because you don't want an argument. I don't want to cause an issue or whatever. So when you think about, wow, did I just allow myself to participate in this to avoid conflict, but I think I'd be able to get thrown into a fiery furnace, like we.
Do you think sometimes it's crossed my mind, like, do they at the time know that, wow, this is a big test and God trusted me with this big, huge test?
Well, we see that with these three, yes, because they've been faithful in the little things, which, by the way, would have led to death. You remember the captain of the King's Guard, Arioch, was like, hey, you guys need to eat the meat and drink the wine, because I'll lose my head, for this. And then the interpretation of the dream, nobody could do. It's like the penalty was always death, as a motivator, or just a scare tactic. That would be the intimidation, right, Sharon? So you have the peer pressure, and I think all of these are equally equal.
I like the verse in Joshua 24.
Nice and loud, Lisa.
I like the verse in Joshua 24.
Too loud, Lisa. A little lower.
Where after he says, choose this day who you'll serve,
Yeah.
the people said, far be it from us to forsake the Lord, to serve other gods. And it's like, they just understood, like, who are we to not serve God? Like, with all the things he's done and all the things he's rescued us from and all the things that we've already seen him working, like, far be it from us to not serve God. Like,
yeah, we need to be that bold, and we see this.
It was in every fiber of their body.
Right.
It was just, their mind was.
Oh, they were prepared for this. They were prepared for this, and again, when we read the verse, he who will lose his life, what he gains. It's like we need to prepare it. It's not this aspect of, we all want to die. It's just our love for God is the number one priority, that if that's what it takes, that it could be a witness for somebody else, then that's okay. We're not a big fan of this world. Are you? Anybody a big fan of this world? Yay, world. No, I'm not.
No, I'm ready.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. So here's the thing, where should our treasure be stored? Oh, y'all gotta keep it down.
Your heart.
Yeah. Now, where's your treasure stored? All right, your heart. Where your heart is, where your treasure will be.
Yeah, where your treasure's at.
Yeah. So where's your treasure at?
In heaven.
Heaven.
Is it?
Heaven.
Is it in heaven? Rhetorical question. Is it in heaven? Because we sure do fight quite a bit for the things of this world, when we should be standing up for the things that are in heaven, right? Enoch lived in the atmosphere of heaven. What atmosphere are we living in? Are we more of the world? Paul tells us, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, knowing what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. That's heavenly things, being transformed. Where is our treasure stored? All right, Nami, you got a comment. Go ahead.
Yes, here is we are reading, I hope we are talking this one. The third block, the bullet is Ellen White makes a very insightful remark about the body language of the king when he spoke these words. She says that he spoke them. My question is, with hands stretched upward in defiance.
Defiance, yep.
Defiance? What
Yep.
does that mean? I don't know.
Defiance means in spite of, a disregard for God, against him. You know, he's in thank you, Nami, because she's making me get back on the course of the syllabus. That's our next bullet point. That insightful remark is body language, because he says, and who is the God that will deliver you? Who is the God? You know, Stalin, Ravi Zacharias tells a story about an encounter, a time that he spent, I think it was with some family members of Stalin, his children or grandchildren. I think it was his daughter he was talking about, quoted saying how when he died, Stalin, he still had his like fist up in the air, you know, and he was responsible for tens of millions of deaths, you know, in Russia. But it's just that defiance that just like Pharaoh, who is your God? You know, it's such an act of defiance, and you see it all the time when people raise up their hand, and it's an act of defiance. You know, we've seen a lot of that lately. You know, and acts of defiance. So you want to know what that looks like? You know, maybe look up a little bit.
Like this.
Yes. Look, if you've been to a Bronco game and you're a Bronco fan, I'm not saying go now, but you know, and you saw Tom Brady, you had your arm up in defiance against Tom Brady. I'm just.
I say thank you.
That's an actual thing. I'm serious. It's a Jonathan, do you have a comment, bro? Because it looked like you had your hand up, and I'm trying to scan all the screens. Yep. You're good.
Oh, he's made it home.
Well, it says you're good, but
Still can't
Yeah,
hear
we
you.
can't hear you.
all right. Well,
Nothing.
You'll have to chat
Oh.
in the chat.
Yeah, it says he's unmuted, but we can't hear him for some reason.
Is he on his phone?
all right. If you can figure it out, Jonathan, just say, "Hey, brother Ben," and I'll stop talking so we can hear your comment. But we can't hear you. All right. I'm gonna go to the next point here. Let's see if we can get his microphone figured out. The answer of the faithful remnant was respectful. That's one of my favorite verses in the Bible, yet firm. Let's have a volunteer read chapter 3, verses 16 through 18. Tanisha, all right.
It's one of my favorite verses too, so
Oh,
I will
good.
read it. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up."
Yeah, that verse 18. But if not, don't you love that? They're like, our God will save us.
But if he doesn't,
Yeah, but if not, we're not going to do it. And that's why I love that. Like, do they know God's will? Yes. It's so important that we know God's will. Do you pray to know God's will? Do you pray for God's will to be done? Couple them together. God, reveal to me your will so we know it, and then we'll know when his will is done. So they know that by standing up, they have the attention of the world, if you will, the whole empire, the king of the world with Nebuchadnezzar. And now they've got everybody's attention like, oh, our God will save us. And maybe everybody's looking at the fiery furnace like, oh, if not, we're not going to worship. We're not going to violate our relationship with God for you. Jonathan, are you on? Something weird with your mic. We can't hear you.
Star 6. Try and hit star 6.
Star 6 is what our resident expert in Zoom is saying.
I think
Well, now
that's
his
if
picture
you're
went
on
away.
the phone.
Is that what star 6 means?
Thanks, Sharice. Well, I don't know if it was on the cell phone.
What about volume up? Maybe.
I think I heard.
Sandy's talking.
What? All right. Go ahead, John, and then Sandy.
Just said,
Okay.
Jonathan, turn your volume up. Maybe
Oh,
your
okay.
volume's down.
I think we can hear him.
Thank you, Sandy. All right, you're on, Jonathan. I promise.
Okay, so I was just briefly, I was on reading Exodus. I think it was 5, but anyway, it was recommended, from a friend. She told me that she was reading about Moses, and I remember what you were saying about in the beginning of when Moses went to talk to the people, and then he pretty much scoffed at them, and then he increased their labor. So yeah, that's what I was gonna
Bro,
say.
that's such a good point. That's such a good point. So I'm going to use that as a segue here because you're right on track. You're absolutely right. So in Exodus 5, it says, who is the Lord? I should obey his voice and let Israel go. I don't know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go. And their labor intensified here. So notice what happens here in Daniel chapter 3. Notice what the king's reaction is to this response. Let's have somebody read. Hoku, would you read verse 19?
Sure. Verse 19. Then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more than was usually heated.
So if a regular fiery furnace wasn't hot enough, apparently 7 times more. So was the punishment increased? I mean, it seems like it just would have been bad anyway, but it's so hot there. Notice what is written in the Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, volume 4, page 1169. When Ellen White vividly describes the face of Nebuchadnezzar after the young men spoke, says satanic attributes made his countenance appear as the countenance of a demon. So he looked, our countenance is how we look, the way our facial expression, our body expression, and his expression was that of a demon. God would shortly answer this charge. I will deliver them. The husband would protect the bride. And this is on page 69. The shepherd will protect his sheep. The head will care for the body, and the sovereign would keep his covenant with his servants. Jesus says, unto the least that you've done, right? You've done it to me if you've clothed the naked, if you've fed the hungry, if you've taken care of these people, you've done it to me. So again, think about the reverse aspect. If we neglect those duties, is it like we've neglected? How does Jesus see it? Like we've neglected him. So everything that we do, Todd, this goes back every time we study before this class, something gets brought up, but God, he searches our hearts. He cares about who we are, not, us trying to fool everybody, but we are talking about the eyes of wisdom, how it searches the depths of our heart. The same mistake was made by Pharaoh. This is what Jonathan was talking about. So that means our minds are heading in the right direction when he says, I do not know Yahweh, and I will not let his people go. He challenged the God of heaven. And did God fight for Israel? You better believe it. Were they delivered? Yes. Were they delivered from having to experience the trials?
Yes.
When the plagues happened, was Israel, were they still in Egypt, or were they already across the Red Sea?
Oh, they were still in Egypt.
So were the plagues happening around them?
Then.
Were they seeing the effect of the plagues on the people who defied God?
Yes.
The people that they knew? There's so many lessons that tie in. So do you think Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, you think they're seeing like their buddies from Jerusalem? Or maybe some of the religious leaders now that are accusing him, you think they're like, man, we went to church school together. What are you talking about now? And that they were part of those accusers. Notice the time of trouble for the 3 young men. Let's read Daniel 3, verses 20 through 23. And let's have somebody on Zoom do this. Well, I'd like to get through one more point. Dietta's unmuted. Go ahead, Dietta. Will you read verses 20 through 23?
And he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. I often wonder why it mentions those names over and over, because just right there, I think in those few verses, it mentioned it at least 3 times. It doesn't.
Remember what the theme is as we've been studying Daniel. You have Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom and God versus God's people in his kingdom. Do you remember there's always this comparison? So it's like these men now who Nebuchadnezzar has renamed because his God is the powerful one. He's destroyed Jerusalem. He's taken them captive. He's the leader of the world. He still has an ego issue, which we'll study in chapter 4. Praise God, though. Nebuchadnezzar does get humbled. There's a good ending for him. But you have this like, okay, so the angry king, what verse does that make you think of? What other part in the Bible does that make you think of so the furnace is fired up 7 times hotter. The people who threw him in were the ones that died. The people who were thrown in did not die. You live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. We'll understand more of that when we get into Revelation, but here is another good example of that. So they were going to kill by the fire. Well, how did they die?
By the fire.
By that same fire.
Same exact fire.
By the way, the one comment. Y'all got to let me know because
I don't want to interrupt.
All right, go ahead.
So no, it just makes me think too, because like I found it fascinating that they say with their robes, trousers, turbans, their clothes, all of that. It just made me think of like the full armor of God. You know, like they had on their full armor. They were protected, and that went with them. So.
Our coats, trousers, which are pants. I mean, I think we've had this discussion before. I think King James says hosen, but we'll go with trousers and pants. Okay. Are those flammable?
Yes.
I mean, they're flammable. They had all the fuel a fire would need on there. I saw Annie's hand. Go ahead, Annie.
I just want to take you guys back because you asked, is there anywhere else in the Bible to see that? It takes you back to Moses when the people were walking towards the promised land. You know, God used the fire to guide them at night and used the cloud to cover them daytime. And you know, their shoes, their clothes, they never tarnish.
That's right.
Because they were walking through with the Father.
Oh man, that's a good point, Annie. 40 years. You know how happy I'd be if I had a pair of shoes that lasted 40 years? Amazing. You know how happy I would be if I had a pair of shoes for 40 years.
So besides just them being flammable though, like it just makes me think in Ephesians, it says, therefore put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand firm then, with the belt of truth, with the breastplate of righteousness, with your feet fitted with readiness. So it's just the parallels between those two. Like they were prepared and ready and fully clothed with all of these before they even got to this point.
Right. The armor of God is spiritual.
Right.
So does Nebuchadnezzar see them with the armor of God on?
No.
You know, like, and so you get this visual of these guys are gonna, burst into flames, when they get there, which you see with Nebuchadnezzar's valiant men. He's like the strongest guys that he had. And again, so you've got that spiritual armor. That's Ephesians chapter 6, right? Okay. We've got a comment from Laura. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Sorry, yes. Hayden actually has a comment that he wants to speak on.
All right, so
talking about how the clothes and stuff were fireproof. Well, in Ephesians chapter 6:16, in all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, in which you can extinguish all of the flaming darts of the evil.
All right. See, you're on the same wavelength. I love that everybody's putting that together. Is God a consuming fire?
Yes.
What the Bible says so. Was the mountain that Moses went up in Sinai, was it on fire?
Yes.
Oh, the people were terrified, down there. And who went up there? Moses did.
Moses.
Where do the 144,000, the redeemed, where do they stand in heaven when John gives a description? The lake of fire is what destroys the wicked, but he saw a sea as glass and mingled with, look, God's people are fireproof. God's people are fireproof. Look, I got to plug Fox's Book of Mars again, and we're going to wrap this up. There was a guy, I think I talked about him last week. I think it was Polycarp or somebody, and he got thrown into a fire, and Eusebius is writing about it, and he says, oh man, he looks like gold refined in fire. His appearance looked like silver refined in fire. And they would talk about the smell and all the stuff that would happen when people were tortured in Colosseums. And he's like, and there was a sweet fragrance, and he didn't burn. Nothing burned on him. They ended up having to stab him, to kill him. And it was, I thought about, this example in Daniel 3, and I'm just like, look, and look, were people burned? Yes. But we're talking spiritually fireproof. The Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they didn't care about this life on this earth. Where's our all right, Nami, you got a question, go ahead.
Yes, this is not a question. Since we are talking about fire of God, I think we become the same character as God, so that's why we are not burned, because God is a burning fire, and we become a part of God's character. So we can able to stand with that. Yes.
You want proof? Adam and Eve were clothed with with robes. We've studied this. Here's the plug for the Revelation 7 seals. On the 24 elders, we've studied this, that all the beings in the universe, the redeemed, the angels, everybody, Adam and Eve were clothed with God's glory. When they sinned, guess what disappeared? Why? Was it an act of mercy that the robe of righteousness, of glory was, oftentimes, like, obviously they wanted it on, but if it had stayed there, Adam and Eve would have ceased to exist at that moment. They were no longer fireproof. So they're like, let's cover ourselves with fig leaves. And even Jesus knows this. He's like, I'll cover you with skins, tunics of skins, because that's going to be a type. It's going to foreshadow what I'm going to do for you. And the whole part of the restoration, so that we can put on those glorious white robes of righteousness, of the consuming fire. We will dwell with consuming fire, but we will not be consumed. Notice this, and then we're going to wrap up. So the furnace, and actually, the Diamond, did you have a comment? Because I thought I saw. Go ahead.
I was just gonna let you know that one that you were talking about was in Revelations 15:2, about the 44,000 with the mingling fire.
Would you read it real quick?
Yeah. And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you guys keeping me on track and honest on this. Look, we will dwell in fire. So, as Nebuchadnezzar's making his comment, who's your God? It's like, oh, you're about to find out. That furnace is going to do nothing. It was heated 7 times hotter. The number 7 indicates that the furnace was heated to the maximum heat. The number 7 represents totality or completeness. This was a manifestation of the fullness of the king's wrath. The furnace represents affliction, by which God purifies his people. And you know what? We'll pick this up next week, so I want to read these verses. The furnace represents affliction, and I'm going to make a note here, and we're going to describe we're going to read descriptions of Jesus that we have by Daniel and by John, and we'll talk about Christ's affliction as well. So let's make a mark on page 69. We will continue to discuss this fiery episode here in Daniel chapter 3. And we just are so grateful again that everybody is studying with us. Be sure on YouTube, like, share the gospel. Click a button. Click a button.
Share the gospel.
Share the gospel. All right, there you go. Yes, on it. I love it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close this season of study out. We sure do hope you have a happy Sabbath. We look forward to studying with you again next week. And I'm ready for some feet of snow. What do you guys think? Yeah. Jesus' blood covers us so that we are white as snow. So when you look at all the white snow, remember Jesus and how we're told that he will cover us. Okay, we'll have Doug go ahead and close us with prayer. And then for those of you who want to stay on for a little bit for after study, we'll go ahead with that. Go ahead, Doug, whenever you're ready.
Dear Lord God, we are so grateful to be here this evening, and we're so grateful for this study time that we have where we can open up your word. And as we go into the next several hours to the next day, we just ask for your protection for each one of us. If people are trying to head to church, we pray that you will help them to make wise decisions. And I'd sure hate to see anybody on the side of the road for 9 hours stuck. So we just ask for your hedge of protection to be around us. Again, we thank you so much for loving us, for caring for us, and bringing us to this point we're at in each of our walks. I pray that you will continue to encourage us in our walk, that we might learn more about you and appear as we grow to be more like you. That's my prayer. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. With the armor of God, what are we to be afraid of? Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.